Hey guys, I hope you're all good. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of The Diary of a Female Lawyer, which is all about the Solicitor's Qualifying Exam, also known as the SQE or the SQE. So the focus in this episode is to guide, motivate and empower you on your journey to becoming a solicitor in England and Wales. So if you're thinking about taking the SQE 1 and SQE 2 exams but aren't quite sure what that involves, stay tuned, you're in the right place. This episode will break down the essentials. So, what exactly are SQE 1 and SQE 2? I'll give you a brief overview of each assessment and how these assessments differ from the old LPC route. I'll talk to you about the kinds of questions that are asked and the skills that are tested. I'll also tell you when the centralised assessments take place and the current fees. Then I'll give you some recommendations and some tips. So whether you're a law graduate, a career changer, or someone who's just exploring your options, I'll give you a clear, jargon-free overview of the assessments, timelines, costs, and preparation strategies. Think of this as your SQE starter pack. No pressure, just some information to help you make some informed decisions. Now, I'll also do some separate episodes on SQE as well. So I'll do one focused on SQE 1, which will include some tips on how to answer MCQs. And I'll do a separate one on SQE 2, talking about all the skills. Plus, I'll also do an episode on qualified work experience. And, if there's any other significant changes that come up, I'll obviously release other episodes as well. So just keep an eye out for those. Right, so you might want to grab a coffee before we begin. If you're considering qualifying as a solicitor in England and Wales, the SQE route is the path you will have to take. There are 4 key steps to qualifying as a solicitor. Firstly, you'll need a level 6 qualification, but note this does not have to be a law degree, just an equivalent standard of study. You will then need to pass both SQE 1 and SQE 2. You'll need to do 2 years qualifying work experience, which can be done before, during or after the SQE exams. And finally, you must satisfy the SRA's character and suitability requirements. What is the SQE? Well, it's the new centralised assessment for aspiring solicitors, which replaces the LPC route. This assessment has been introduced by the SRA. The SRA set the centralised assessments, which take place at certain points of the year at venues across the UK. There are also some international locations as well where you can take the SQE assessments. The SQE aims to standardise the qualification and make it more accessible. How does it differ from the LPC? Well, there's quite a number of ways in which it differs. So with the LPC, it's usually taken after a qualified law degree, so LLB or Graduate Diploma in Law, the GDL, which is then followed by a 2-year training contract within a law firm. The LPC was a traditional university-led course, whereas with the SQE, you can have a degree in any subject or equivalent qualification. You then have to do your 2 years qualifying work experience, which, is flexible because it can be done before, during or after the SQE assessments. And your qualified work experience can be done in up to 4 organisations. You also obviously have to meet the SRA character and suitability requirements as well. With the LPC, the university set the assessments, so each course could actually vary slightly. Whereas with the SQE, it's centralised, okay? It's a centralised assessment. It's standard across the board set by the SRA. SQE 1 is purely multiple choice questions and SQE 2 is skills-based. The LPC was seen to be more of a fixed structure, so full-time was usually done in 1 year and part-time would be done in 2 years. Whereas the SQE is seen to be a lot more flexible, so you can self-study, you can do prep courses, and you can work at the same time. And the qualified work experience can be done in varied settings. Another difference is costs. So the cost of the LPC was said to be a lot more expensive. However, I will talk briefly about costs in relation to the SQE later in the episode. Okay, so let's focus now then on SQE 1, first of all. So SQE 1 is all about legal knowledge or functioning legal knowledge, FLKs. Okay, this legal knowledge is split into two assessments. So you have FLK 1 and you have FLK 2. FLK 1 includes things like contract, tort, business law and practice, and dispute resolution. Whereas FLK 2 includes things like criminal law and practice, land law, trusts, property law and practice, wills and the administration of estates, and solicitors' accounts. But bear in mind, professional conduct and taxation are covered in both FLK 1 and FLK 2. So each FLK assessment for SQE 1 will be made up of 180 multiple choice questions. Yep, so that's 360 in total for SQE 1. Okay, these questions test how you apply legal principles to practical scenarios. The assessments are closed book, so you can't take any materials in with you to help you, and they're computer based. They're in person at a Pearson VUE test centre. You'll have 3 attempts at passing SQE 1, okay? And you must pass SQE 1 and SQE 2 within 6 years. I understand that each assessment lasts about 5 hours, so stamina and strategy are absolutely key here. SQE 1 assessments are set twice a year. So they're sat in January and July, and you usually get your results about 5 or 6 weeks later. In terms of costs, so at the moment to sit SQE 1 centralised assessment, it costs £1,888. But those fees are set to rise in October 2025 to £1,934. Also, bear in mind that you will have fees on top of this for your preparation courses, okay? And this fee is only for SQE 1. You will have to pay fees for SQE 2, which I'll talk about in a minute. Now, also bear in mind, each time you sit, you will have to pay. So, for example, if you fail the first time round, you will have to pay again to sit the second time round. Now, I've spoken to a few of my students that have gone through, the SQE 1 experience. They've sat the centralised assessments, and one of them actually said to me that it wasn't the content that was the problem. It was having to get through 180 multiple choice questions in one sitting, okay? And what they advised, what their tip was to train yourself like a marathon. Yep, so don't just study the law. Practice sitting full-length mock exams. So your brain is used to concentrating for hours at a time. So get practicing your multiple choice questions, okay? There's loads on the SRA website. They've released a lot of sample questions. Your preparation course providers will also supply a large bank of practice multiple choice questions. And there's also practice questions on the OUP manual website. There's quite a few revision books out there now, and online facilities and apps as well that you can access as well. They said exam technique is also crucial. So, for example, learning how to eliminate the wrong answers fast was a lifesaver. Okay, so that is SQE 1 in a nutshell. So SQE 2 is taken once you've passed SQE 1. And SQE 2 basically tests whether you can do the job as a solicitor. So it's all skills based. It will test your oral skills and your written skills. The oral part tests your interview skills and your advocacy skills. But as part of your interview assessment, you will also have to write an attendance note. And that is handwritten, it's not typed. So you better get practicing your handwriting skills. The written-based assessments test your knowledge on research, case and matter analysis, legal drafting, legal writing. All the while, you'll be expected to demonstrate solid ethical judgment. Like SQE 1, you'll get 3 attempts to pass SQE 2 within the 6 years. SQE 2 is sat a lot more regularly though, okay? So SQE 2 is set 4 times a year. So in January, April, July and October. The results for SQE 2 take quite a lot longer to come through, okay? Typically, they take between 14 to 18 weeks, so quite a while. At the moment, in terms of costs, SQE 2 is £2,902, but again, these fees for this assessment are set to rise in October 2025 as well. They're rising to £2,974. Again, like I said, just bear in mind you will have your preparation course fees on top of that as well if you decide to go down that route. Provider fees for the preparation courses, they vary, so please make sure you do your research. Some preparation courses also include an LLM element as well, okay, and they are usually quite significantly more money than your standard preparation course fee. Another student that I spoke with who had sat the SQE 2 assessment, they already worked as a paralegal when they sat their SQE 2 assessment, and they found that their work experience helped a lot, particularly with the oral assessments, but they admitted that they underestimated how structured the marking criteria was for SQE 2. So their tip was, even if you are super confident in doing, say, the client interview, you need to tick boxes. So have a look at the performance indicators on the SRA website and the assessment criteria, and also practice mock interviews and advocacy. Do that as much as you can, okay? So let's just summarise SQE 1 and SQE 2, shall we? So SQE 1 is all about knowledge and is tested by way of multiple choice questions, whereas SQE 2 is all about the skills. You do need to have your knowledge, from SQE 1 to be able to apply it to SQE 2 as well. You've got a maximum of 3 attempts at each assessment within a 6-year window. At the minute, the total cost for sitting both SQE 1 and SQE 2 is just under £4,800, but that will rise in October 2025. On top of the exams, don't forget you have to do 2 years qualifying work experience, and we'll look at what this means, and we'll look into this in a little bit more detail in another podcast. But it's generally quite flexible, as it can be done, before, during or after your SQE assessments, and it can be done in up to 4 organisations as well. In terms of my practical tips, well, I would always recommend that you do a preparation course. Technically, you don't have to do one, but I wouldn't advise that you just go straight in and sit SQE 1 and SQE 2 centralised. A lot of students find prep courses useful for things like structure, mock assessments and feedback. Like I've said, there are loads of providers out there, so please make sure you do your research before you enrol on any courses. I would also advise that you plan your budget. Like I've said, preparation courses are separate from the centralised assessment fees. When you get round to booking SQE 1 and SQE 2, book early. Slots do get taken up super fast. Another tip, just keep an eye on deadlines. Okay, the 6-year clock starts ticking the moment you sit SQE 1 centralised assessment. And, we all know how time flies. That 6 years will be over in no time. Check your training contract terms as well. Some firms have clawback clauses in there if you fail. I mean, these are really enforced, particularly by the larger firms, but please just double check. Don't neglect ethics. Okay, it's assessed throughout both stages, which completely makes sense, because SQE 1, SQE 2 are all based on the SRA Statement of Competency. Finally, have a look at the SRA website. It has so much information on there about SQE 1 and SQE 2, which is super helpful. They've got practice questions, guideline answers. They've also brought out recently some case studies which relate to personal experiences of aspiring and qualified solicitors that have gone through the SQE journey. So have a read of their experience and see what you think. And that's it. That is your crash course on SQE 1 and SQE 2. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a challenging process, but it's also quite a flexible one as well. A lot of providers for the preparation courses have full-time, part-time, sometimes online courses as well to fit around your lifestyle. It's all designed to open the door to more people who want to qualify as solicitors. Now, whether that's the case or not is a whole different episode. But if you're preparing for the SQE, remember, it's about passing exams, it's about developing the knowledge, skills, and judgment you'll use throughout your career. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of A Diary of a Female Lawyer. If you found this episode useful, please subscribe, share it with a friend who also might be considering taking the SQE, and stay tuned for more episodes. Bye!